Alrighty, so with us wrapping up the moving forward series a couple of days ago, talking about the defending MLS Cup champion that is the LA Galaxy, it's time to do the season preview because we are now a little bit over a month before the 2025 MLS regular season begin, and we have teams that have already started their preseason and started to play their first preseason game in just a matter of days. I think this is a proper time for me to begin the season preview, looking at all 30 teams, and we start off with the expansion team that is San Diego FC. Now, the tricky thing about me doing a season preview about San Diego is the fact that this team is still a work in progress. I mean, despite the fact that they have a roster that we're starting to get a good feel of how their roster is going to be heading into the expansion season, they're still going to be adding some players, and especially as we'll get into the rumor mill, they have been linked with some really big name player that could really help their team, not only in their roster but especially in the starting 11. And I will say that because it's kind of a working progress kind of team, some of the things I might say in terms of the strength and weakness and even the free big question, that could be different by the time when they do decided to build the roster and finish at adding their roster and getting ready for the first ever game against the LA Galaxy on the road. I mean, first game that is. I mean, you know the old saying, you'll never forget your first game. Well, I'm pretty sure San Diego will not forget their first game, where their first ever game, they only had to now go on the road to play against the defending MLS Cup champion. That is the LA Galaxy. Now, as I mentioned, this is the first ever MLS season for San Diego. Their head coach is Mike Iveris. Their sporting director is Tyler Heaps. Now, when Mike Iveris was announced as the head coach of this team, it was a bit of an underwhelming kind of response because there were a lot of links that there was some bigger names out there that San Diego was going to name as their first ever head coach in franchise history. But alas, they decided to settle with Mikey Veras, who has had history with being with the U.S. men's national team, especially on the coaching staff of Greg Berhalter. And one of the reasons why it was kind of an underwhelming hiring, and one of the things that San Diego fans probably are little bit disappointed about this hiring is the fact that because Mikey Veras was on that coaching staff with Greg Berhalter, there are that concern the fact that he's going to play that negative style brand of soccer that Greg Berhalter played with the U.S. men's national team and getting just absolutely ridiculed by the U.S. men's national team fan base. But that's going to be the same thing with San Diego FC. Though I will say this again, with how great Berhalter seems like he does well when it comes to MLS play that is, and this is where Chicago fans are hoping that is the case. Maybe this will translate into his coaching staff as well, with Mikey Veras taking the job here. Now, Tyler Heaps, he is a guy that actually has a lot of connection to the Right to Dream Academy that San Diego FC is very involved in. He's also as one of the board member for AS Monaco as well. So it's not like he doesn't have experience when it comes to being a front office role, but this is definitely a big job for him, being the sporting director and being the general manager and the guy that make the decision of what kind of signings and how they're going to build their roster heading into this expansion season. Speaking of their roster, so their current roster in terms of the goalkeeping role, now they were coming into this season not long ago with four goalkeeper, but recently one of their goalkeeper Doran Furry is now going back on loan with one of the team in the Scandinavian country. So far they only have three goalkeeper in their goalkeeping room. They got CJ Dos Santos, Jacob Jackson, and Pablo Sesiaga. Now in defense you got Hamid Diop, one of the former number one pick for Charlotte a couple of years ago, followed by Christopher McVeigh, Franco Negri, and I actually wrote Franco Negri named twice there accidentally. Andres Reyes and Jasper Lawfulson, which was one of the first pick, or one of the pick from the expansion draft, and actually he was the first pick in the 2025 MLS expansion draft that San Diego picked. Now, in midfielder, they got Alejandro Alvarado Jr., who they just recently picked up a couple of days ago. And they got Heine Ginklin Brusov. By the way, I do apologize if I absolutely butcher the name. I haven't heard how broadcaster, of course, pronounce some of these names, and I'll definitely get better as the season goes along. But yeah, he's another guy that was one of the expansion draft pick that San Diego has. Then you got Manu Dua, who is the first ever pick for the San Diego team in terms of the Super Draft this season. You got Anibal Godoy, Yepi Verskov, and Oni Velikari, who they just recently picked up as well. Then in the forward group, you got Thomas Angel, Emmanuel Boateng, Marcus Ingebrigtsen, Chucky Lozano, Alex Martin, and Anassi Sedin as the forward group for the San Diego FC team. Now, in terms of some of the transfer rumors that they have had, because like I said, they've always want to continue to build their roster. Now, there are four guys that I'm gonna put there that are definitely guys that San Diego is definitely linked, and some of these guys are very close in terms of signing for this team. One of those guys is Luca De La Torre. So for a while, these last couple of days, there's been a lot of rumor that he's going to be going to San Diego FC, and also going back to his hometown club as well, because he is a San Diego native, and this is definitely a big signing for the San Diego team, because he's a guy that's been with the U.S. men's national team for it, kind of on the fringe at time as well. And even though his time in Europe kind of didn't quite worked out in the end, kind of fell out of favor with Celta Vigo. He will be very happy to be playing, coming back to the U.S. and playing for his town club as well. Now, another guy that they've been rumored to get is Raul Ruidiaz. Now, this is kind of an interesting one because, again, they definitely are looking in the market to get a number 9. That's kind of one of the area that I think that is missing when it comes to attack, that they have a lack of 9. And getting Raul Ruidiaz, that's an interesting one because, I know Ruidiaz last season, he scored 8 goals for the Seattle Sounders in his final season. And you kind of start to see that he's more of a guy that is more relegated in terms of being a super sub than just a regular starter. But that being said, with the experience that he can bring to the table, and they hope that he can at least linked up with Chucky Lozano in terms of that 10-9 kind of combination. Maybe that's kind of the reason why they're looking to bring in the former Seattle Sounders legend to the San Diego team. And as I said about Nico Ladero last season with him going to Orlando City, it's gonna be very weird seeing Ruidiaz wearing San Diego instead of Seattle, since he's been with Seattle pretty much throughout the last couple of years, and it's the only MLS team that he joined before he come to MLS a couple of years back. Now, one of the player that they actually have just recently reported to be linked with, and it actually was just recently today, is Anders Dreyer. Now, he's a guy that is a winger that currently play for Anderlecht, and a guy that actually used to play in the Premier League with Brighton as a youngster. Didn't really quite work out. He's been playing mostly in the Belgian league. Now, from what I heard, there's a report saying that the amount is $5.5 million. He could potentially be the second DP that this team has had. Keep in mind, I think this team have only have one DP right now. Chucky Lozano is the only designated player for the San Diego side. So yeah, this is going to be interesting to see whether they can get this deal done, and especially will definitely add into an area that they needed, because again, there's still some holes that this team has had. Winger spot are definitely one of the spot that they're looking to try to spend big money to accommodate this attack. It feels like when I look at this roster, San Diego is really focused on mostly on the attack. This looks like it's one of the team that is really hoping that they have a good attack to kind of hope that it will be good enough to hold up against a defense that, as I'll mention in terms of weakness, there's a lot of question about that heading into this season, which also kind of means that they're probably trying to build up a very entertaining team to watch, which I won't mind that. I mean, I would love to see the San Diego team be very entertaining and be something similar to what we've seen in previous expansion team, where it feels like different expansion team have different ways to build their roster. San Diego, again, it's kind of touring in terms of what Atlanta and LAFC did, which is more of an attacking minded team heading into their first season, rather to be a defensive kind of team like what we see with Nashville and Cincinnati did when they came into the league. And then, of course, the biggest name in this rumor mill is Kevin De Bruyne. So, there's been a lot of rumors pretty much just throughout this whole winter about whether or not if Kevin De Bruyne is going to be coming to MLS, and especially joining this San Diego side. Now, I haven't heard any rumor in these last couple of days that is the case, but yeah, that is a big name that they're gonna bring in. Especially will help out their midfield as well. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not if they can get that one over the line. Now, looking at the first 5 and last 5 game of the season, because I want to see how their season is going to go and how their last 5 game is going to go in case if they're in the playoff contention. Now, in the first 5 game, as I mentioned, it's a daunting task to have to play your first ever game against the defending MLS Cup champion, that is the LA Galaxy. But the first ever game at home is going to be against St. Louis City, so that's kind of interesting when you have two of the newer team in MLS going to be facing off against each other, and it will be officially the first ever game that San Diego will be playing at Snapdragon Stadium. And I'm also hoping to attend this game as well. I've been to San Diego many times in my life, and I'm really hoping I can go to this game and experience this game in person. And this will be also the second time I would actually be seeing an expansion team really early in their time. I remember winning the first ever game that Inter Miami play against LAFC not long ago. Then on March 8th, they are going to be going on the road to play against Real Salt Lake before they have to play against Columbus at home and then play against Austin on the road. And then, not to mention the next two game after these first five games of the season, they got LAFC in Seattle in their rearview mirror after the Austin game. So yeah, this is not an easy schedule to start the season. And one of the things when it comes to expansion team, when it comes to start the season, this is where it gets very interesting to see how whether or not if the roster that they built and especially the tactics that they're looking to implement is that going to work, because that's one of the always the big mystery when it comes to expansion team. And I know that what we saw with St. Louis, that was something that was completely an outlier, and I think the reason why St. Louis was so well when they came into the league in the first 5 game season, winning all five of them, is because there's a lot of unpredictability of what they're going to do, but also they had a plan in terms of what kind of style that they play. I have no idea what kind of style that they're gonna play. I mean, I maybe have a good idea in terms of maybe some Greg Berhalter kind of style of play with Mikey Veras using that tactics with this team, but I don't know whether or not if that's gonna be good or successful, and whether or not if that might catch some of these teams by surprise, at least in the first 5 games, that is. Now, looking at the last 5 games, in case if they're going to be in a playoff hunt, they're going to be playing against Minnesota at home before going on the road to play against Atlanta. Then they play against the San Jose Earthquakes on the 27th. Then they go on the road to finish off their season. In fact, their last 2 games is going to be on the road. So they pretty much wrapped up their whole home game in the regular season relatively early in the end of September. But they face against the Dynamo on the road, and then their final game of the season on decision day, they have to go to Portland to face against the Portland Timbers, who that could be a matchup that could decide playoff spot, considering as I'll talk about Portland in the season preview, things are not going so well in the Rose City right now when it comes to their team. But yeah, looking now at the strength of this team, it's gonna be the midfield. I mean, you look at this midfield, and especially even going for on the attacking end, it looks really decent as well. Especially if they do eventually add Luca De La Torre, and maybe even add the likes of Kevin De Bruyne. That's a really good midfield. And we already mentioned, I have a feeling some of their recent signing, like Una Valakari, he's gonna do well for this team. Should be a regular starter for this team in my opinion. So yeah, overall their midfield could be really strong. And I even mentioned the fact that they potentially can get Kevin De Bruyne in there. I mean, you get literally the world best midfielder in this team. And I also think that with if they do decide to add Kevin De Bruyne, and because Kevin De Bruyne is more of a number 10, and they already have a number 10, it's going to be interesting whether or not if they're going to maybe kind of play him as a hybrid eight or a hybrid 10 as well behind Chucky Lozano. Either way, if they do add these kind of player, this could be a really strong midfield, which is something that it's not a bad idea for this team to build up a strong midfield to control the game. Now, obviously, the biggest weakness of this team is the fact that they still don't really have a number 9. And again, if they're relying on either Thomas Angel or Raul Ruiz as the number 9 of this team, oh boy, that's gonna be interesting. I mean, I know Rui Diaz could still have it if he is gonna operate more of a poacher role, which is kind of what he's had in this last season or two for the Sounders. And not to disrespect Thomas Angel, he's a guy that mostly played in the USL Championship. He did okay doing his time with the Phoenix Rising, but definitely not a starting caliber number 9. So that's gonna be something that maybe they need to address as the season begin. The goalkeeping spot is definitely a little bit of a concern. Again, when you look at the goalkeeping room, it's very uninspiring. I mean, out of all 3 of these goalkeeper, any one of these can definitely start for this team. My bet is probably going to be Pablo Saciaga. That's going to be the starting goalkeeping for this team. Consider he has had experience in MLS, and maybe Mikey Veras will go with a more experienced goalkeeper in Saciaga rather than Jackson or Dos Santos, but I won't be surprised if CJ Dos Santos, of course, get the spot as well, or Jacob Jackson gets the spot. But again, all three of these goalkeepers, it's kind of a bit of uninspiring. It's more these guys are more of an outcast, and I'm not saying that outcast goalkeeper doesn't do well for an expansion team. A great example of an outcast goalkeeper that actually turns out to be very well is Brad Stuver from Austin FC. When Brad Stuver was the main goalkeeper for Austin, not a lot of people thought that he was gonna do 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 well, considering he's more of an outcast for NYCFC. But he turns out to do well and grab his opportunity, and that's what San Diego is hoping that is the case. And then of course the defense, again, very uninspiring when I look at this back line. The only guy I can trust in this back line is Andres Reyes, though he could be a little bit adventurous at time as well. But he was a big part of why the Red Bulls were very good when it comes to their defense in the postseason, and you can clearly see how much they miss him in that MLS Cup as well. Now, free big question, of course, for this team. I already mentioned who will be the starting goalkeeping for this team. Do they have enough in terms of goal scoring? Actually, that's kind. I probably shouldn't have even mentioned this. I think they do. Probably they might need to add a decent number nine, and they're really hoping that Chucky Lozano will be kind of like that Carlos Vela type of player that not only will be carrying in terms of being the playmaker of this team, but he's going to be a goal scorer for this team heading into this expansion season. And then again, the other big question is that will Kevin De Bruyne add to the list of star player coming to MLS? There's been a lot of rumors of him potentially coming to MLS and joining this expansion team, and we'll see whether or not if that actually is going to happen. Now, expectation for this team, as an expansion team, we've seen multiple expansion team able to make it to the playoffs in their first ever season, and I think that kind of, made it to the playoffs in the first season, and that kind of adds the pressure for San Diego to do well in their first ever season, as well to make it to the playoffs, and that's probably going to be the thing that they're gonna gun for. They definitely do not want to have like a terrible first season like what we saw Cincinnati did, and even in some way just a first season that, well, actually, yeah, Cincinnati was really the prime example of a team recently that just really stumble out of the gate. Pretty much most of these expansion team has either made it to the playoffs or look respectable in the first season. I mean, both Austin and Charlotte, even though those two teams that didn't make it to the playoffs, they look very respectable in their first ever season. But yeah, there's no doubt there's a lot of excitement is in the area for San Diego FC. There's no doubt I'm also looking to try and attend a couple of games down in San Diego as well. And yeah, we'll see how this team is gonna look heading into this season, and most importantly, we'll see what other players that they're going to be adding. As I'll continue to talk about them in terms of adding some big player onto their team heading into that expansion season and heading into that first ever game against LA Galaxy on the road. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at San Diego FC in the season preview. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and if you're a San Diego FC fan, I'm pretty sure you're very excited about their expansion season. But let me know in the comments below what kind of question you have with this team, and especially what kind of strength and weakness you think this team is, and what kind of expectation you have with this team heading into this expansion season. But till then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.